Hey guys, Steven here, and welcome to part 4 of my ubass blues course. If you've been following along, you know how to play a 12-bar blues with a root note bass line and various patterns of different styles. But now we want to talk about turnarounds and endings. These things specifically happen at the end of the 12-bar form, usually in the last two measures. So that'll be measure 11 and measure 12. So what exactly is a turnaround? Well, it's just using those two measures to mark that we are at the end of the form and make it really obvious to the band as well as to the listener that the 12-bar form is starting over again. So if you remember from the previous lesson, we had a shuffle pattern, a slow blues pattern, and several others. Well, we're going to be focusing on the shuffle, the slow blues, and the swing for these turnarounds. So let me play an example of a turnaround that happens in measures 11 and 12 of a shuffle feel. Originally our pattern was, so what did we do here? Well, what we're doing is we're sort of outlining the one chord in measure 11 and then using the rest of that measure to walk into the 5 chord. So here's what we did. We played the first note of the pattern. Then remember we're starting on our middle finger on the 3rd fret of the E string. Okay, then our next note is still going to be the 2nd fret on the A string. And when I say still, I mean just like the pattern. The normal pattern has that note next too. So we play 2 of the first note. That's the 3rd fret on the E string. Then 2 of the 2nd fret of the A string, then 3rd fret of the A string, then 4th fret of the A string, and then we play the 5th fret, and then we're going to go 3rd, 4th, 5th on the A string. Those were frets, by the way, 3rd fret, 4th fret, 5th fret on the A string at the end. So here it is. Notice that rhythm is a little bit different. It's a little bit more syncopated, especially in measure 12. And this really lets the band or the listener know that, hey, we're doing something different because we're going back to the beginning of the next 12-bar cycle. I gave you the fret numbers. Now let's talk about it in terms of it being a pattern so that we can move it around to other keys. So you're using the grid from the 2nd fret to the 5th fret. So our index fingers are getting 2nd fret notes, our middle fingers getting the 3rd fret notes, our ring fingers getting 4th fret notes, and our pinkies getting 5th fret notes. So the pattern for this turnaround, middle finger note on the E string 2 times, then 1 string thinner, index finger note 2 times, middle finger note 2 times, ring finger note 2 times. Then we're just going to play the pinky note once, and that's the start of measure 12. So all the rest of that was measure 11. And then the next measure is going to be that 5 chord note, starts it, and then we walk into it again, this time just hitting the notes once a piece. Middle finger, ring finger, and pinky notes each just 1 time a piece, and then holding out the 5th fret note until the end of the measure. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Then we start the next 12-bar cycle at that point. So let's hear that one in context, and then we'll just go over some other turnarounds out of context to save some time. So we're going to play through the 12-bar form with the pattern for the shuffle feel that we used in the last lesson. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we go. And we start over. So hopefully that made sense. So let me just go from the 5 chord to the 4 chord, and then we do the turnaround after that. This is measures 9, 10, 11, and 12, and we're just doing measures 9 and 10 so you get the context. So let's try that from the 5 chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's a turnaround. Then we start over. So hopefully that made sense. So now let's just talk about a variation that you can do. So this one, instead of walking up to that note, meaning the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th fret, we can walk down from the root to that note. Now if we tried to do it on the E string, we'd run out of notes. Oh, we're out of notes after that note. So we can't really do it there. So what I do is I take all of these notes up an octave for this version of the turnaround. So instead of starting on the 3rd fret on the E string, that's a G note, we're going to go up to the 5th fret on the D string, which is also a G note. And we're going to do this. So we're starting on the 5th fret on the D string, then we're going to go to the 3rd fret on the D string, the 2nd fret, then the 1st fret, and we're playing each of those twice. And then if you wanted to, you could just go down one more to the open string. But since we're avoiding the open string, we're going to move that over to the A string. It's the same note, 5th fret on the A string instead of the open D string. And then we're going to go 3rd, 4th, 5th on the A string. Those were frets, by the way. 3rd fret, 4th fret, 5th fret on the A string at the end. So let me just kind of explain what I'm doing and what you can do pattern-wise if you're trying to move this around. Well, first we're starting on our root note. So this is a G note, right? And I have my pinky on that G because it's an octave up from where we were starting. So we're still on our original grid. We're just now starting from our pinky note on the D string in this case, which is an octave away. It's the same note, it's a G note, an octave away from our root note. Okay, so we play that 5th fret note, our pinky note, 2 times. Then we're going to go to the middle finger note on the same string. Then we're going to do our index finger note on the same string. And then this is the weird part. We're going to shift out of our grid. So our index finger is going to move down 1 note. And that's outside of our grid. We're moving this way 1 note. So when I say down, I mean in pitch. Instead of 2nd fret, we're moving to the 1st fret. But then we want to come back into our grid to play the 5th fret on the A string, which would be our pinky note on the string 1 string thicker than where we started. So then, yeah, we're basically playing our pinky note back in the grid after we've played that 1 note out of the grid. So in our grid, pinky, middle, index, then 1 more fret down, -1. So instead of the 2nd fret, we're now playing the 1st fret. Okay? And then we're coming back to our grid and playing our pinky note 1 string thicker. And then after we do that, we do our middle finger note on that same string, then our ring finger note, and then our pinky note, all on that same string. So let's do the whole thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shift. So just remember that you have to shift down and then immediately shift back to get the right pinky note there. Let's play that in the context of the 12 bar. I'm just going to play measures 9, 10, 11, and 12. We're going to use the same shuffle pattern that we used before. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we go. Okay, and one more time a little bit slower so y'all can play along. From the 5 chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 chord. Our turnaround. Okay, and then you're back to the beginning of the blues, so we would just go after that. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. That covers the shuffle feel. The slow blues and the swing feel are a little bit different. Let's start with the swing feel, because that one's a little bit easier. That one's going to sound like this. Very similar sounding to the other turnarounds. So basically this one, pretty straightforward. We're going to start with our middle finger on the root note. So we're playing, if we're in the key of G, we're playing the 3rd fret on the E string with our middle finger. Just one time. Then we're going to go to our index finger note 1 string thinner. Then our middle finger note. Then our ring finger note. All on that same string, the 1 string thinner string. And then our pinky. So all that's on the A string. Okay. And then we'll hit our pinky note again with a slightly different rhythm and hold it out for the rest of the measure. So because we're not doubling the notes, we're actually just playing quarter notes here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then for our last measure, 1 and 2 and 3, 4. So what I did there was syncopated that last rhythm. So we're playing beat 1 and then the and after beat 2. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and then we just hold it out for the rest of the measure. Very similarly to the shuffle feel, you might kind of combine both of those two and end up with something more like this. So that's common as well, because both of them have that kind of swing feel going on behind them, which is the same as the shuffle feel. Very similar. Okay, so now let's talk about one that's just a little bit different, because the turnarounds on a slow blues aren't quite as simple. We have to outline a few more chords in there. Basically, we double up how quickly we're changing the chords so that there feels like there's more momentum at the end of a slow blues, and that's how we know we're at the end of the 12-bar cycle. There's more momentum bringing us back to the next 12-bar cycle. Okay. So this is going to sound like this. Okay, so this one has a little bit more variation in our hand moving, so we got to talk about the general idea of what's going on. So measure 11 and measure 12 are actually going to have 4 chords total in them instead of just 2. So normally we just go from our 1 chord to our 5 chord. Well, since we're moving so slowly, we have enough time to add in some other chords. So we're going to start on our 1 chord, then we're going to walk into our 4 chord, then we're going to walk back into our 1 chord, and then we're going to walk to our 5 chord. So instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, we're going to go 1 chord to 4 chord to 1 chord to 5 chord, and that's kind of the idea. So when I'm doing this, I'm playing the root of our blues, so we're playing in the key of G, right? We're going to have to go outside of our grid in order to do this one, so it's a little bit tricky, but not too bad. So basically the idea is we're playing the root note first with that rhythm, 1, so it's like 1, lit, 2, because remember we're doing like triplets now, so triple-lit, that kind of feel. But it's going to be 1, lit, 2. And then our next lit is going to be walking into the 4 chord just from 2 frets back. So basically, I'm kind of putting my ring finger, not my middle finger. This is why it's kind of strange. You could just shift a little bit more, but let's just do it this way. Put your ring finger where you're trying to get to. So we're starting on our 1 chord, but we're trying to get to our 4 chord. So we're going from a G, trying to get to a C. That's 3rd fret on the E string, and our target note is 3rd fret on the A string. So we're going to go -2 frets from the 3rd fret on the A string for the rest of this walk up. So root, 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 then minus 2 frets from the target note, and then we're just going to fill in that gap and land on the C note. So this would be the 4 chord on the downbeat after that. So let's stick with the triplet feel. 1, a lit, 2, then we're walking into the 4 chord. A lit, 3, a lit, 4, and then we're going to walk back into the 1 chord. A lit, 1. So the walk back into the 1 chord, we're doing the same thing. We're putting our ring finger, like hovering it over where the root note of the 1 chord is, but we're going minus 2 frets from there and just going in a row until we get back to that note. And that's our basic idea there. So and notice that in between each one I'm hitting the root note a couple of extra times. So it's like root, 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 walk, walk, root, 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 walk, walk, root, 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 walk, walk, root, root, root. So 1 chord, walk into the 4 chord, walk into the 1 chord. Now we're going to walk into the 5 chord, which means our ring finger is going to end up on the 5th fret on the A string, because that's where our 5 chord is. It's a D note. Okay, so we're going to put our ring finger there, and then we're going to do what ends up being the 3rd fret will be where our index finger goes, then the 4th fret, and then the 5th fret. So that would be index, middle, ring, ending on where the 5 chord is. So we've kind of abandoned the 4-finger grid, and now we're just kind of using 3-finger grid that's moving around a little bit. So it's like your hand is doing the same thing for each chord. 1 chord, walking to the 4 chord, walking to the 1 chord, walking to the 5 chord. So let's do that together one time. 1, 2, 3, a lit, 4, a lit, 1, a lit, 2. So let's hear that in context. I don't want to go around the whole entire slow blues because that'll take a while. So why don't we do this instead? We'll do it from the 5 chord. So this will be measure 9 of the slow blues pattern. 1, a lit, 2, a lit, 3, a lit, 4, a lit. Turn around. Back to the original. Alright guys, so now you have a swing, a shuffle, and a slow blues pattern, or even 2 for the shuffle, that you can use for your turnaround. Well, now let's talk about what happens when you're actually ending the song. Because at the very, very end of the song, we want to do something kind of similar to the turnaround, in the same place as the turnaround, but sounds more final. So usually what happens is before that ending, we're actually going to do a stop. So it doesn't always happen. Not every song has a stop. But basically in measure 10, a lot of times, that's going back to the 4 chord after doing the 5 chord, a lot of times people will stop and then the vocalist will just say like the most dramatic line of the song, and then we'll do this ending that sounds a lot like a turnaround except for the final couple of notes. So like an example, you're playing the 5 chord. Let's do the shuffle first. 2, 3, 4. So that's one. And if you have a slow blues, it might sound like this. 2, 3, 4. You can also do that same slow blues ending for a shuffle ending as well. So those overlap. They're very, very similar. The only difference is one, you're legitimately doing triplets. The other one, you're just doing swung eighth notes that emulate triplets. Okay, so first let's talk about the swing ending that you could also use for a shuffle. We're doing this. So what you might notice about this one is it's the same notes that we used on the swing turnaround, but the rhythm is different. So instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, we're going 1 and 2, 3, 4. So there's a little bit of syncopation. Bum, bum. It gets to that second note a little bit quicker. And once it gets to that note, it hangs there a little bit longer. So we're playing the middle finger note on the E string. So this will be the 3rd fret on the E string since we're in the key of G still. Then we're going to move over to the 1 string thinner index finger note on the A string. Okay? Those are our first 2 notes. Then we're going to play the rest of the notes in order. So our middle finger note, our ring finger note, and our pinky, because we are back to the 4-finger grid. Okay? So that's a lot like the turnaround, but now we're going to continue and finish out with some notes from the rest of the scale. And that's going to be our index finger note on the next thinnest string, then our ring finger note, and then our pinky note. So let's go through that again. So just the finger-wise, middle finger on our root note, 1 string thinner, we're going to play every single finger, index, middle, ring, pinky, and then when we get to the next thin string, so this will be the D string in our case, we're going to play the index finger and then go to the ring finger. We're going to skip over the middle and then our pinky. And then after that, at the end of that, we're going to go back to our lower octave and play the root note one more time. And that'll be the final note of the song. So in this case, fret-wise, we're playing 3rd fret E string, then 2nd fret A string, then 3rd fret A string, 4th fret A string, 5th fret A string, then 2nd fret D string, 4th fret D string, and then our pinky is playing 5th fret D string. And then at the very end, we're going to go back to our 3rd fret on the E string. But we have this syncopated rhythm, 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Okay, so let's play that together. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now let's do our shuffle ending. So we have one with a little walk down here. It's a lot like one of our turnarounds, but that's going to be... So the first measure is exactly like the turnaround. We're going to go to the upper octave root note of our 1 chord. So that's going to be 5th fret on the D string, which is the G note. And that's our pinky note. So we're going to play that one 2 times. Then we're going to go to the 3rd fret, which is our middle finger note. Then 2nd fret, which is our index finger note. All that's on the D string still. We're going to scoot 1 more fret down to the 1st fret. And so our index finger has to move out of the grid in order to do that one. And then we're going to go back into our grid and play our pinky note, 5th fret on the A string. And notice that with those other notes, I was playing each one 2 times. But then once I get to the 5th fret on the A string, our pinky note, I'm just playing it once. And then now we're going to play our ring finger note on the E string and then our middle finger note on the E string. So that's going to be basically a note that's not in our key at all, and then we're resolving to the root of our 1 chord. So and I want to note that once you get to this note, you're going to play that one short. So that's the pinky note on the string, 1 string thicker from where we started. you want to play that one short, and then sometimes you have to watch the drummer because there might be a pause there. There might be a vocal thing that happens there, and it can be a extended period of time that's not with the timing of the rest of the song, right? So you have to watch for that. Sometimes it's right in time, and the way I wrote it out here, and then other times it's extended out, and you just have to look at the drummer or the person leading the band to know when to hit the final two notes. So we got wait or in time. Yeah, so that's the idea on that one. Now let's talk about the slow blues ending. You could also use this over a shuffle. It's just a slightly faster version of it, basically, if you do it over a shuffle. So the slow blues ending sounds like this. So this one's just going to be middle finger note. So this is our root note on the E string. It's a 3rd fret E string note. We're playing that with our middle finger. We're going to play it 2 times. Then we're going to move up to the A string 2nd fret with our index finger. Then we're going to play a 3rd fret. Notice I'm playing each one 2 times. Then the 4th fret. And then same thing, once we get to our pinky note, we're just going to play it once. And then there's a little break there. And then that's going to be 4th fret and 3rd fret on the E string. Now let's talk about it in terms of it being a pattern so that we can move it around to other keys. Middle finger on our root note, 1 string thinner, index finger, then middle finger, then ring finger, then pinky as a short note, and then ring finger note on the original string, so in our case the E string, and then the original root note, which was our middle finger note. So we're sticking to that grid for this one. Let's do the slow blues ending in context, right? So that means we're going to start at measure 9, and we're going to be playing this slow blues pattern, if you remember it, on the 5 chord. Then when we get to the 4 chord, we're just going to stop for that whole measure. So we're going to play beat 1, and then wait, wait, wait. Then we're going to go to our ending after that. 3 a lit, 4 a lit. Stop, 2, 3, 4, ending. And you might notice those last 2 notes could be out of time. Once again, watch your drummer or the person leading the band. Sometimes they're very active and they'll, like, if they're playing guitar, they'll move the neck of the guitar to help you know when to hit those notes. If not, you're watching the drummer, because it's very rare that you'll be the one signaling it to them. Could happen if they're inexperienced, but it's better if you're playing with experienced players to assume one of them will cue those last 2 notes for you if they're not in time. Alright guys, so that's it for turnarounds and endings. So yes, there are some variations to these endings. We can't cover everything in this course, but if you have these endings down and you know the difference between them, you can listen for this. If you're playing at a jam, you may not know which ending people are going to play. What's great about a jam is some of these endings work together. So if you're playing one shuffle ending and they're playing the other one, they still sound okay together. So just don't be discouraged. They have the same rhythm. And if you're nervous about, what are they going to play at the end, try your best to just listen and pay attention, and otherwise commit to the one you chose, and y'all will end at the same time as long as you're watching the band and looking for those last hits. And then as far as the turnarounds, same thing. You might do one and they might do the other. Well, maybe on that 12-bar cycle it wasn't the right one, but when you come back around to it on the next 12-bar cycle, you can do the one that they did the previous time. And once again, there are variations on these, so just listen for subtle things, but a lot of times the finger patterns will be very similar. So keep that in mind. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed learning these turnarounds and endings. Please stick around. We've got walk-ups and variations to the 12-bar pattern to go, and then we'll put all this together. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.